been a fantastic week and a half that I've been here, and a wealth full of knowledge here around the room that'll answer all your questions and help you this afternoon. I'm here as part of the social welfare, so I'm a social worker for Salvation Army, and so my part here has been to help migrants, that are probably maybe your employees as well, for food vouchers, if they're cold, electric blankets. Civil Defence has been working with us, so we've got food vouchers, food parcels, and anything to do with welfare as they hit probably the winter months and they're freezing. So that's been our job to help them with that, and maybe direct them if they've got anxiety or any areas like that that we've been able to help with. So it's been an amazing week. Sad to hear a lot of the stories, but also wonderful and informative. So enjoy and make the most of this afternoon's process. Thank you, and I'm going to hand you over to lovely Katie.
Thanks, Henny. Hello everyone and welcome once again. My name's Katie. I've been living in Queenstown for over 20 years. I've been an employer, a manager and an employee. So I'm well in tune with the frustrations that you have with immigration. Okay, with the lag in policy, intention and impact that it's having on our businesses, okay? So today we've got some immigration advisors and lawyers here to help you, to be available to you. After this, we'll break out and do some one-on-one. What I do ask is that you respect that what's said in the room stays in the room, just to protect that transparency and honesty between us, but please do make the most of the people in the room. There is a lot of fact here, not fiction, to help you through the different challenges you have with your businesses, okay? A couple of things that have come up is employment law protects everyone, okay? And sometimes we will argue with immigration on that, on where your employees stand. Some of you are going through the restructure redundancy process. You've got to get it right, okay? You absolutely have to get it right, and that's why we have the employment lawyers in the room here today to help you with some of those questions. No one checks an employment agreement until it's tested. Okay, and I think you guys some of you might have come up against that now and see what's going on. One thing that is putting us all into a spin is the labour market checks. They have always, immigration's policy has always been, the labour market check is assessed on the day when you get the case officer. In the past, there wasn't a whole lot of change in the labour market. Now there is. So that's what we need to work with and understand. Judith from MSD is going to explain just how many people and New Zealanders are unemployed and why the labour market, the exemption list for Queenstown's been removed, to give you a bit of an idea around that and where we're at, okay? Low skill visas, you can still apply for a low skill visa, you just need to meet labour market check requirements. For employees that are nervous about spending money on medicals or police certificates beforehand, wait until you've done your advertising and your labour market check, and you'll know, okay? You'll know if they're suitable in New Zealanders to train or not, and then you go from there. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg. We're here to help you navigate through it. Please do make the most of us, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Chelsea. I'm with the Ministry of Social Development, and I'm in the labour market team there. So traditionally our team looks after we implement national employment strategies in the regions and in like local communities. So during COVID-19, we were responsible for, well, we still are, responsible for providing support and assistance with organising, understanding and administering the wage subsidy. So I'm here today to take questions about the wage subsidy and all other financial related products. And just to put some context with the sheer volume of wage subsidies we've had over 580,000 applications received as of the 29th of May. We've had over 450,000 approved as of the 29th of May, and $11 billion has been paid out. So it's quite a large product that we are very proud of. So we want to be there to support you guys if there's any questions or ambiguity around using our products. Thank you. I'll just pass over to Judith.
Thanks, Charles. Kia ora, my name is Judith Mclellan. I'm the Local Service Centre Manager for Work and Income, MSD, for Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes. Huge organisation, one of many arms, and predominantly at the moment we are working on the whole labour market side, the work side, versus the welfare side, which is all your benefits. Labour market check reports, is that the official word? Right. So just to give you some background on that, every employer had to apply when they had a vacancy, and those checks would come to the work and income side. We would see if there was people available on our books, and if not, then the approval would go forward, and then it would be joined to the visa that your employee was applying for. Why the world has changed, I don't think I need to tell you that, but Queenstown itself used to have on average about 20 people at one time receiving a job seeker benefit. That has now within 6 weeks gone over 500. So what that means from our point of view is that you have 500 available people to join the labour market or rejoin the labour market. I can tell you that we have incredibly highly skilled people now. So gone are the days where you would get Joe Bloggs and he failed to turn up from work or didn't really care. The labour supply that employers now have available to them is huge and incredibly highly skilled. And within those skills are a lot of transferable skills. So whatever your organisation is or your employment is, I can almost guarantee would have someone to fit. Now, we are predicting that when the wage subsidy, although it's restarted a different model, when some of those wage subsidies stop, that we're projecting those numbers will go up even more. And the other thing is that we're also projecting when, in terms of labour market demand, when the visas that immigration will talk about actually expire, so we in turn will have employers coming to us, and already this morning there's probably over potentially 100 vacancies due to come to work and income in the next 3 months. So very, very changing demand in our labour market, and seriously, it's changing weekly. But the supply is really, from you guys' point of view, is what you need to know. The other thing is those figures are coming off people that are currently receiving job seekers. We also have a whole component where you don't have to be receiving a benefit to actually register with us to look for work. And so there's a whole bunch of people in that pool as well. So they're not included in those 500 odd. So yes, large demand, large labour demand. I might just stop there because if you start getting into a whole lot of stuff, as Chelsea said, MSD is administering these products that the government is rolling out. So not only the wage subsidy, you now have the COVID relief income payment. That's a different set of rules. And so we're having employers tell us that, in fact, I just had one this morning, where 2 Kiwis have asked the employer to be made redundant so that they could get the payment. It's pretty smart, eh? I was thinking, wow. So, you know, within all of that scenario, I know, within that scenario itself, it puts the employer in the wrong place and the employees incredibly naughty. So unfortunately, human nature is that everyone's always going to try and push the systems, and I have no doubt the wage subsidy is part of that as well. But generally, so you just need to be aware that MSD is administering these products as they're rolling out, and every single one of them are for a specific purpose and have a specific consequence for people on looking for work. So, more than happy to take questions later, like everybody else. Thanks.
Thank you, Judith. Kia ora, everybody. My name is Tori Keating, and I have been a travel agent here in Queenstown for the past 14 years. Prior to COVID-19, we were pretty popular people. With migrant workers now, we're not the sort of people that everyone wants to see. And the reason for that is because we're here to give some advice around repatriation. So I'm here with my team this afternoon, and we're volunteering our time to support you and your staff with decisions that may have to be made with regards to returning home to their home countries. Since the start of COVID-19, my role has changed quite drastically, and I have been working with Civil Defence and with quite a few of you as well who have reached out to me to help repatriate some of your staff home. We have organised charter flights when there haven't been any flights heading out of Queenstown. We have filled buses, and we have organised rental cars and travel bubbles for people to head out. And that's changed things quite a bit. We've also been working with various groups, both locally, with different embassies, and with the Civil Defence as well, to help move people. You're here today because you are looking for ways that you can support your staff. And if one of those ways to support your staff is that they need to find a passage to get home, then there are some things that you can do to help them with that. First and foremost, please encourage your staff, if they have not already registered with their embassy, to please do so. When they leave their home country and they come to New Zealand, their embassy does not have any contact information for them. They don't know phone numbers, they don't know addresses, and if there are repatriation flights that could be helpful for any of your staff, their embassy needs to know how to get in touch with them. Doesn't mean that the embassy is going to fly over, knock on their door and take them home. It just means that they've got an option to make connection with them if there's any way that they can provide assistance. Secondly, it's also really important to register with a travel agent. As I said, my team are here, but we have some fantastic travel agents in Queenstown, and I've reached out to all of them who are more than willing to help. Booking with a travel agent, or even just registering with a travel agent at this particular time, gives people the most up-to-date information. Things change, and they change so rapidly, it's very difficult to stay on top of. Qatar Airlines, in the first 5 weeks of the COVID climate, changed their flexibility policy 7 times. Just 10 minutes before this session started, we have been given notification that Singapore will now be open to transit on a one-way basis only, ex-New Zealand, but there are terms and conditions around that. So it's really important, because we have that up-to-date information, that your staff register with the travel agent if thinking of going home is an option for them. We have the capacity to do things that can't be done online. So we can hold flights for a few days, which gives people a bit of breathing space if they need to consider what their options are going to be, but they don't want to book immediately. We know which airlines are actually flying. There's still quite a few airlines who are selling seats online at the moment, but they're not flying, and they don't plan to fly within the next couple of months, or certainly within the period that they're selling those tickets. We can work directly with Air New Zealand to help create greater capacity to meet repatriation flights. So that means if there is a repatriation flight that's heading out of Christchurch or Auckland, and we don't have very many seats heading out of the Southern Lakes region, we can work with Air New Zealand to ensure that they're upgauging the aircraft to a larger aircraft, or they can put on extra flights as well. And then that also means cheaper prices for people who are struggling and trying to get home. Really important also that people plan to travel. Often repatriation flights happen at very, very short notice. One instance we have is last week we were given 5 days notice over a long weekend, which wasn't overly helpful, of a repatriation flight that was heading back to South America. That gave people 5 days to wrap up their lives here and head home. Things that you can assist with is advising them what they need to do in order to be prepared. They need to have all documentation prepared. They need to know what they're going to do with possessions that they can't take with them, such as cars or larger items that they've purchased here while they've made Queenstown and the Lakes District their home. They need to know what their obligations are in terms of disconnecting services if they happen to be the leaseholder of the house that they're living in. So that's power, gas, phone and internet. And then having conversations with landlords as well, and handing back the keys before they've disconnected all those services, because the last thing we want is for anyone to be living in the dark or in the cold. It's winter now. Also, other things to think about would be whether or not any of your staff have signed up to KiwiSaver? How do they access that when they leave New Zealand? What happens with bank accounts? What happens if they've been receiving ACC? There's a lot of information that if you've never left a country permanently before, or even semi-permanently, might not be forefront in your mind. So it's really good to have some of that information. We have a checklist. If you wanted to come and see us afterwards, we have a checklist that we can email you that you can use for your staff that will go through some of those things. They'll need to figure out how they rehome pets and how they rehome pot plants and other things that they don't just necessarily, that they want to be taken care of once they leave. There are a couple of options for leaving New Zealand. The majority of repatriation flights that have been organised by embassies, though, have already departed, and we don't have an awful lot of intel to suggest that there will be many more. The British High Commission and a lot of the European embassies have advised that while there are some commercial options available, they won't be offering any embassy-sponsored flights. With regards to the embassy flights, we are doing our best to try and work with different embassies to ensure that there are flights available, but if there aren't, then there is the possibility that we can also look at organising charter flights and trying to get people on them. There are not very many commercial options available at the moment. We have 3 flights a week out of New Zealand to the USA, and that will connect through to the US and Canada. That will also connect through to the UK and Europe. We have a handful of flights with Qatar Airlines and Emirates Airlines that travel via Australia, but in general they're very difficult to take because the transit time in Australia is in excess of 8 hours, and you then exceed your 8-hour transit without visa requirement, so then that means that travel exemptions are required as well. There are some flights through to Singapore, Hong Kong and Guangzhou and China. In general, you do need passports for those, but as I said, things change so rapidly and policy is changing all the time. 10 minutes ago, we now have a new window, a new corridor for people to head to Europe and some parts of Asia with Singapore Airlines. So being in touch with the travel agent will keep you up to date with the most information available. We used to have 30 international flights a day departing out of Auckland alone. We now have less than half of that per week. So it really is very difficult for people who are having to make the decision that they need to go home. One in particular is South America. There are currently no commercial flights to South America whatsoever. We are expecting to see flights come through with Emirates Airlines on the 4th of July that will take passengers through to São Paulo, but if the rest of the borders are closed, so that's into Brazil, if the other borders are closed though, that's not particularly helpful because foreign nationals not of Brazil can't enter Brazil. It does make it particularly difficult for people. We have been advised by some of the airlines that LATAM in particular may not resume their international travel until at least September or October this year. Now that can change. Air New Zealand released their schedule internationally in May for travel to Los Angeles, Hong Kong and Shanghai, as well as some South Pacific and Australia only. And yesterday they advised that they will be resuming flights to Tokyo on the 25th of June in Japan. So just make sure that everybody is registered. Things change very rapidly. Finally, thank you very much for coming along today. Please encourage your staff to come to the following events that we have. We'll be here tomorrow and then next week as well. It's really important to have everybody coming because it's really nice for them to get fact and not fiction, as Katie said. Facebook is great for memes of cats and lots of other things, but it is not particularly good for information. It is not a reliable source of news. It's not a reliable source of facts. We have seen a lot of people, a lot of the migrant workers come to these sessions and they've been a little bit nervous. They're not sure what to expect. They have left here with an awful lot more clarity and understanding of their situation. So please do encourage your team members to come and join us for the following workshops. Thank you.
Kia ora, my name's Simon Smith. I'm with Immigration New Zealand. Myself and a team of people from Immigration New Zealand have been involved with the Kaha Hub since last week. And look, I'm really pleased that we can be here. We're here to provide as much support both to the migrant community and to you as employers that we can. We don't have all of the answers by any means, and Craig, who will speak after me, will talk about that a little bit more. Things are changing rapidly in Wellington, so you know as well as I do, COVID-19 has been huge globally, it's been huge for New Zealand, and the impacts of that are lasting. The economic impacts, the tourism and hospitality industry took a major hit and it continues to take it, and Queenstown really is a microcosm of all of those issues because of the importance of Queenstown in relation to hospitality and tourism for New Zealand and the number of people that work here in those industries, and particularly migrant communities. So look, we are here to do everything that we can to help. We are putting information back to Wellington about what we're seeing here, what we're hearing from migrants, from employers. We're reporting back each day. The government is considering a range of options for migrant communities across New Zealand, but that's part of the wide range of things that our government is currently looking at in relation to COVID-19, let alone trying to run BAU for the country. So, difficult time for everybody, and so sometimes at the moment the answers are taking a bit longer to come out than we would like necessarily, but that's the way it is at the moment. So we're just having to bear with that for now. I'll just before I start, I'll talk further. I want to reinforce some of the information that Judith gave you before about labour market testing and stuff, because obviously that's a key thing for Immigration New Zealand. But before I start, there's been what we've heard over the last week now that we've been here since we opened last week. We've heard a few sort of myths coming through, and we just want to break down some of that. I guess the first one is that Immigration New Zealand people are not monsters with pointy teeth and horns and pointy tail and breathing fire. You might get the odd person who's difficult to deal with, but hey, we've got 2,500 employees, you get that, you know that. But we are here to do everything that we can to help. So please, there's about 8 of us here at the moment. We are situated down the far end of the room to the right-hand side as you look back. We are more than happy to answer all of the questions that we can answer at the moment. Right? So please approach us. I'm sure you will. I don't think there'll be a problem. Migrants sometimes feel very concerned about approaching officials, and what we've tried to do over the last week is really put them at ease, and hopefully if you're talking to any of your migrant employees who have been here over the last week, you'll be hearing that they have felt somewhat relieved by the time they've left here. That's certainly our intention, to put them at ease as much as we can, given the situation that they're finding themselves in. Another myth, redundancy. So what we heard from some migrants last week was that their employers were telling them you are redundant, unfortunately, from whatever date, and you are therefore unlawful in New Zealand. Well, that's not correct, okay? People still have a visa. If their visa hasn't expired as yet, they still have a visa. It means they can't necessarily any longer meet the requirements of that visa as far as their employment goes, but they still have a visa. They have not suddenly overnight become unlawful because they have been made redundant. And what we want to do is work with those people and use the time that they have where they're not working, where they may be seeking other employment or deciding to go back to their home country, whatever they're thinking about, to help them as much as we can. So no one is going to come along the day they're made redundant, pluck them out, put them on a non-existent flight to wherever they live. We can't do that, we won't do that, and the flights don't exist anyway. So, we are in a situation here where it's not black and white. There is just no black and white in this at the moment. There are rules and regulations, there are things that the government is considering, and there's all the big grey area in the middle, which is really what we're trying to work with. So we're being as realistic and as pragmatic as we can possibly be. Okay? So a term that I've sort of coined, I guess, while I've been here, and it might sound a bit naff, but we are here to support, not deport, because people honestly thought that there was a hit squad coming down to Queenstown, all these immigration people coming down, and I'm not a hitman. Haven't got the black tie or whatever. So, that's not what we're here for. The other myth that we heard was about changing jobs. If someone has lost their job and they still have a visa expiry date sometime in the future, that they can just go off and work for another employer. Well, that's not actually necessarily correct. In some cases, they may be able to, but usually changing your employer, your job, your role even, will involve a conversation with Immigration New Zealand. And it may be that there is a need for a visa to allow that to happen, a different visa. Okay? So please say to your people, as we have been all the way through, talk to immigration. If your situation is changing, please talk to immigration. We will do whatever we can to facilitate that for them. And I think that's the main sort of things, some of the things that we heard last week that people were just really concerned about. So even just being able to put their mind at ease about some of that has helped. But look, back to the labour market test issue. I know this will be a real issue for a lot of you at the moment. And Immigration New Zealand has always required a labour market test. There was an exception for Queenstown for a period of time. That exception got removed 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago. And the reasons for that are pretty obvious, given some of the information that Judith has already talked about and that I'm going to share with you now. So with the job seeker benefit, across New Zealand, 189,000 people now on job seeker benefit. That's 6.3% of the working age population of New Zealand. It is a significant increase over the last few months from what I believe was an average of somewhere around 4%. So it has changed dramatically in a very, very short time. Apart from that, there are also 1.7 million jobs that are currently subject to the wage subsidy scheme. That's a huge number. There are also a whole heap of Kiwis coming back to New Zealand because where they were is not safe. So they've been repatriating back to New Zealand. So all of these things are combining to mean that there are a lot more people available in the labour market than there used to be. And Judith has just mentioned going from an average of about 20 here in Queenstown to 500. Dramatic change in a short period of time. For Queenstown, I read an Infometrics report, and you may well have seen this report, but it's pretty bleak. And what they are predicting is that over the next year, there'll be a 23% drop in GDP in Queenstown. There'll be a 25% drop in employment. And there'll be the loss of about 7,900 jobs. Now that's terrible to hear, but that is what is being predicted. That may or may not happen, we don't know, it's a forecast. But it's pretty horrific numbers. So again, putting the labour market test into that perspective, all immigration countries around the world, any immigration mission, their job is first and foremost to protect jobs for their local citizens. So for us, we have a saying, it's Kiwis first. And the labour market test is all about that. It is Kiwis first. If you can't tell us why you can't employ a Kiwi, we are unlikely to give a migrant worker a visa to work for you. You are going to have to demonstrate that. And we will be really wanting to see it. I mean, you've heard the numbers. So why is it that one of the 500 people registered on job seeker benefit and the other number that I'm not 100% sure of that are also registered who don't qualify for job seeker benefit, why is it that one of those can't fill the role that you are needing filled? Okay. Now, it may well be that you can prove that. It might be a skill level, it might be that there's no one suitable, whatever. There may be reasons. They will be tested. So someone in one of the forums last week said to me, well, labour market test, it's across New Zealand, Judith, I think, mentioned before, the register is a New Zealand-wide register of people seeking work. And someone said to me, well, do you think someone from somewhere else is really going to come to Queenstown to work? I said, well, I don't know, but neither do you. So until we test that, we don't know. You don't know as an employer that there's not someone sitting up in Auckland who's lost their job, 4 mouths to feed, who suddenly will look to do anything anywhere. And until you test that, neither of us know. So we will be asking you to test that. And part of it will be going through MSD and getting a skills match report. Okay. So look, I think that was the key message for me to get across. It's one of the reality of the situation. It means that, and I've been saying the same to your migrant workers and the people who have come to see us, it is a very different situation. Our minister, in an interview that I heard, he said the requirement for migrant labour for New Zealand has now changed dramatically. And it has, because there are now a lot of New Zealanders who are looking for work. Okay. So it's tough. We will support people in every way that we possibly can while they either look for more work and hopefully are successful in finding it, or decide what other options they may have. Okay? But please, I know I've just had a sort of one of those messages, but look, we are here to do everything that we can. So end of the room after this, please come and talk to us, and I'll just hand over now to Craig. Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Craig Walsh. I'm a relationship manager with Immigration New Zealand. I'm based in Dunedin, and Queenstown is part of my patch, so to speak. So, yeah, a few familiar faces in the room, so thanks all for coming along. So as Simon said, we're in somewhat uncharted territory at the moment as a result of COVID. So I was just going to go through some points this afternoon, and as weird as this may sound, I'm going to start off just by, as Simon mentioned, we don't have all the answers. So just a front foot to save you asking questions and we keep saying, I don't know. I was just going, as I say, odd as this may sound, I was just going to highlight some questions that we can't answer today. It's not that we don't want to, it's just we honestly don't have the answers. And just to give that a bit of context, these questions have been asked numerous times before and they've been put through to Wellington, not only from Queenstown but from other parts of the country. All employers are wanting the same answers, and it's been considered at a very, very high level. It's not just immigration is dealing with this, it's being considered at ministerial level across, in some cases, various portfolios for these answers to come through. So there will be a lot more, but just 3 or 4 of them that are probably top of mind that we're being asked regularly. So the first one is if somebody has to work a minimum of 30 hours a week, can you reduce those hours as a requirement of their visa? Or the visa requires 30 hours a week. The short answer is we don't know yet. Similarly, if they have a condition on their visa that they must be paid a minimum rate, can you reduce that below what's specified for their visa? Don't know. People on a work to residence visa, often called a talent visa, if they again need to meet certain salary requirements or work certain hours, what might be the impact on that visa when they get to the point of applying for the residence visa, usually 2 years' time. We're waiting to find the answer. So they are probably the main one. There'll be others that you've probably got, but just as I say, just to let you know that we just can't answer those ones at the moment. We're also reporting back each day from our sessions here, reporting back to Wellington. So any new questions you've got, we can add to the list. In some ways, I'm probably surprised if you've got a new one. We've had so many, but go for it. Also, even just reiterating those questions that I've just highlighted, that people do want the answers and we are trying to get them as soon as we can. But as Simon also said, things are changing quickly and rapidly. Even just this week, there has been 2 changes that have been put up on the Immigration New Zealand website that have been announced. So that would be what I would encourage you to do, is keep checking on the Immigration New Zealand website on a regular basis. As I say, there's already been 2 changes go up this week so far, and we're only up till Thursday. So that is pretty much where all the information is going. Some of you may also be getting information, updates coming directly from immigration. If you've subscribed to those, they often go out around about a Thursday afternoon. So that's where I'd encourage you to keep looking, because if and when the changes come out, that's where they'll be. So I guess I'm apologising that we can't answer all those questions in advance. A couple of other things that we have been asked and we can answer is what are the processing times like at the moment for visa applications. So since COVID, it's been decided that all essential skills work visa applications from the Queenstown region will all be processed through our Pororua office up in Wellington. And we've actually got somebody from the Pororua team with us today. Also, what happened during the lockdown is that our branches closed for the best part of 2 months. So they've only reopened in the last couple of weeks. So there's obviously a backlog that they are trying to clear. So as a result, there is a bit of a delay in getting visa applications processed. So when we checked last week, applications are at about the 70-day mark from when they were lodged to when they'll be assessed by an immigration officer. That's already come down to about 60 days. I know that's still quite a significant time frame, but the expectation is, and the hope is, that that will continue to drop as the processing continues and as they start to work their way through the backlog and get through to the newer applications. The other thing you may, as an employer, be asked to provide is updated information as part of those visa applications if you've got staff that have an application in the system. So as was touched on before, when an application is looked at, it's assessed at the time the application is processed. So there may be situations where people lodge their applications several weeks ago, and as we've heard numerous times already, that the labour market has shifted so much that we can't rely on what information was provided perhaps back in March or April whenever the application was lodged. So as an employer, you would be asked to provide updated information either about your own situation in terms of sustainability of your business or about the availability of the job and possibly even having to double check that there are no New Zealanders available. So don't be surprised if you get asked for that information. It's not that you're being singled out, it's just part and parcel. Again, not just for Queenstown, it's happening throughout the whole country where employers are having to provide updated information in support of a visa application. The other thing I'd ask is if you are making people redundant or have done, and you haven't been talking to Immigration New Zealand yet, we're keen to get that information of your workers or your staff. The reason being is that as we've been having conversations with those that have been coming through over the last week, it's working with them as to ways in which we can talk about their possible options or ways in which we can help in terms of their either future, maybe for staying in New Zealand, or even what their departure plans might be if and when they are able to. So it's, again, just a matter of keeping in touch with those people and working with them, and Sue over here will probably touch on that a little bit later. We've also been asked about what's happening about the policy changes that were announced by the government late last year, and some of those changes are to take effect in the middle of this year, which here we are. So the changes that were due to take effect in July, I understand are still on track to take effect in July. So we'll probably be hearing about that very, very shortly, because there will be, given that July is only next month, there will be a lead-in time so that people can adjust to what the changes are. But for those of you that don't remember, what those changes related to was changes to the definition of high skill and low skill, and also changes to using the ANZCO code as part of supporting a work visa application. So when I say the definition of high and low skill level, what will be used is the median income, which is currently $25.50. So if people are being paid above the median, they're deemed to be higher skill level. If they're below that, they're in the lower level. So it takes the ANZCO part of the equation out of what is currently defined as the skill bands. So as I say, as far as we're aware, it's still on track to be introduced sometime next month. So again, just if you're not hearing about it, just keep an eye on the website. I'm sure any changes will be announced there. The other thing we're sometimes being asked about is if you've got workers that are stuck overseas and maybe still have a work visa and can't get back into the country. There is a process if those people are what you would define as an essential worker. That process is on our website. It's not a simple process, and it's a very stringent process. Again, you might have even heard the Minister being interviewed on the radio earlier this week when he was talking. I think he was indicating there's something like 10,000 people that are stuck overseas that fit into that category at the moment. So it's quite a significant number. and they're all being assessed on a case-by-case basis at the moment. But it's another situation where the government is looking at what might be able to be done for those people. But at the moment, it's case-by-case on the definition, or if they meet the definition of being an essential worker. You also have one of those on your seat or in your pack, just reinforcing the point that things may change. Bear in mind that that was put out last month in May. It's still current, but who knows when it might change, or not the whole thing, but some bits and pieces in there could change as time goes on. So just bear in mind that that is current for now, but it would pay to just double check the website if you need to rely on that for ongoing information. So that's probably the main points we were just going to cover this afternoon. And as I say, if you have any specific questions, we encourage you to come and have a chat with the team and the other people that are available to you around the room. But we're happy to take some generic questions now that often you might all have similar issues that you wanted to hear about or get an answer to that might be equally important to other employers as well. So between us, we'll do our best to answer those. But if you have any specific questions relating to yourself or your business, they're probably best to come and have a chat individually with us. So thanks for your time, and we're happy to take questions. And if you do have a question, just pop your hand up and Craig will stick a microphone in your hand. So